This is the part 5 of time dependent perturbation theory chapter, and what we will do in this phase and this part and later part may not be accounted exactly as a perturbation, but yet it is some aspect of time dependent or time dependent Hamiltonians, or Hamiltonians which is varying with time. So far we have done this all this mainly we focused on this developing the generic framework of time dependent perturbation theory, where we have a potential which is varying with time but yet small enough from a part of the Hamiltonian which is exactly solvable, or where a closed form solution is available. And we developed the whole framework in the form of Fermi golden rule at the rate transition probability and all that, and we did these two examples on a constant perturbation which is switched on at a certain time, and another is a harmonic perturbation. So now we will do two extreme cases, and in which, so already we discussed a little bit of this switch on format, but we will mainly talk about these two extreme cases. So one case where the time variance or the rate of change of the potential or the perturbation with time is super fast or super slow. Now again, when I say super fast or super slow, comes the question of with comparing to what. So it will be compared to some internal time scale of the system. For example, harmonic oscillator have an internal frequency or time scale. So when I talk about super fast or super slow, it has to be compared with some sort of internal time scale of the system. It could be the energy gap between the smallest state and the fast excited state. So this energy gap is associated with some time scale through the energy time uncertainty and so on. So the super fast one is called sudden approximation, and the super slow one is called adiabatic approximation. So the main idea is you change the Hamiltonian from some Hi to Hf, and you do it suddenly. It's like toggling a switch very quickly. And what you will expect, you remember this objects on a tablecloth where you pull up the tablecloth very fast analogy. If you do it fast enough, the configuration will remain almost intact, and if not, then of course, or very slow, then of course the configuration will change as the same rate as the tablecloth. But here, let's say if you are doing it super fast, then the system will remain in the eigenstate of Hi. So you prepare the system in the eigenstate of Hi. How can you do that? Let's say you have a system with some initial Hamiltonian and you perform a measurement. If you perform a measurement, energy measurement, the system will collapse into one of its Hamiltonian eigenstates, and now you know for sure that the system is in the nth eigenstate of Hi, let's say. And then it will, if you suddenly change the Hi to Hf right after that, because it is so quick change, the system will not get time to respond to that. The wave function will not, or the eigenstate will not get time to respond, and the system will still be in the eigenstate of Hi, but the Hamiltonian is Hf. And then if you let the system evolve in time, it will evolve under the Hf, the final Hamiltonian. So that is basically the idea of this sudden quench. This kind of system thing is called a quench, a change which is very rapid, very quick. Okay, so and we will discuss that how one can estimate the various things, what are the quantities of interest in such systems and how to estimate them. So basically that is what is the subject matter of this chapter. Or alternatively, you can do this whole thing very slowly, which means the system is an eigenstate of Hi, but you are changing the Hamiltonian super slowly, so slowly that the system is like at every moment is getting time to adjust with the new Hamiltonian. So you will see that when that happens, then the system will be carried, the evolution will be carried under Schrodinger equation to the nth eigenstate of the Hf. So basically this, and then there will be no level crossing in that format. In a quick format, it can be anything. Okay, so here is an example to get an idea about what I was talking about. So let's say I have a particle in a box problem, infinite wall box at time t equal to 0, that is my hi, and I change it to hf. I either can do it super slowly or I can do it super fast. In the first case, the wave function is psi I x is root 2 by a sin pi by x with this a. Second case, the wave function of this problem is the same except a is replaced by 2a. Similar in form, but a is replaced by 2a. So now sudden approximation means I suddenly change the wall, move this wall to 2a. So then the system will not get a time to respond to it, on the quantum state will not get a time to respond to it. So after I perform the quench, it is still the wave function will look like this, which will remain in the half of the box. And now that is your initial state. And now if you want to ask what is the time evolution of this system after the quench, you have to take this as an initial state and do e to the power minus I h f t on this on this wave function, which is at the half of the state. This is the ground state. So this is the ground state of hi will be the initial state of the hf. But if you do it adiabatically, then you move this super slowly. Let's say you start with this ground state of this and move this super slowly. Then the system will adjust, like the ground state of this system. If you move from here to here at super slowly, then the new state, the new system ground state will be this state only, like this half state, which will expand to there. And if you keep doing that, and after a long time you go to this 2a, you will find that the ground state of this big system is exactly what it is supposed to be, the actual ground state, if you do it slowly enough. Okay, so this is what I normally expect. This is the common sense expectation, and with calculation we will see that how that works out. Okay, now also as I was telling earlier, that this is not really a problem of perturbation theory, because the change in the sudden approximation especially, because the change in the Hamiltonian is huge. There is no small parameter. You suddenly change it to double. I mean, what is the small? There is nothing controlled. So it is not really a problem of perturbation theory, but it's a problem of extreme cases or time dependencies of time dependent Hamiltonian. So it's more like a non-equilibrium situation where the energy is not conserved, because of course you drastically change the system. So that means in order to do something like that, you have either pumped in some energy into the system very quickly, or you took away some energy from the system. Actually both are not non-equilibrium condition, but one is a quasi-static, as you learned in thermodynamics, another is sudden. So it is just like when you are moving the wall slowly, you are basically extracting energy from the system, like the piston problem of a slowly expanding gas. And in the sudden approximation, the state is still psi I x, which is a complicated combination of the eigenstate of hf. So you can write the psi I x in terms of the eigenstate of hf, and then the evolution of the system can be worked out by looking at how each of the states of eigenstates of hf evolve and their linear combination with that, and then combine them with the same linear combination, and then you can tell how the psi I x evolved in time. Okay, and in both of these cases the energy expectation value is at least conserved, so that you can show. So this is more like a free expansion of gas, in a sense that since you have suddenly removed it or suddenly changed it, it is like a there is no work done in that sense, because the barrier is suddenly removed. It is like equivalent to saying the barrier is suddenly removed. There is no pressure applied anymore, or no force is applied anymore. Okay, and you can work out this problem 2.40 to get a better feel of this this particular example of doubling the size of the particle in a box problem. But in this pre-recorded lecture I will not discuss that problem because it's a very simple problem and worked out in Griffiths. I'll rather discuss two other examples which are also very interesting and useful to understand this idea. So first thing, if you notice that we talked about, we must address the issue of how fast is fast enough, how slow is slow enough. So then the question comes of the time scale of the problem. So in the sudden approximation, what is the relevant time scale? So HI to HF, what is the relevant time scale? The time scale or rate of change or change time from HI to, when HI is completely becoming HF, that is the time scale of the change. And when I say very quickly or suddenly, that means this time scale is smaller than any other time scales of the problem, much smaller than any other time scale of the problem. Then only you can apply sudden approximation. Now how will I estimate the relevant time scale? You use the energy time uncertainty. So let's say if you have a energy difference between the first two lowest energy states or average energy, if it's oscillator, then it's the energy gap between two states, and the relevant time scale is delta h bar by delta E. So that must be much bigger than the time scale of the quench. And if that happens, then you can apply the sudden approximation, which is this intuitive idea that the system will sit in the same state of the original system. It will not have time to respond to the change, and the system, after that, the system will evolve by the dynamics of the final Hamiltonian. So here is a real example of this, more real life example of this. The first example you should do is this oscillator problem in 2.40 of Griffith. So that is the most easy example and gives the full picture with a little simple calculation. This is the second example, you can say. The second example is this unstable isotope of hydrogen. So it contains a single proton and two neutron. It's unstable with half-life of 12 years, and it suffers a beta decay. It goes to a beta decay to helium. It emits an electron and antineutrino in the process. Now to understand the full mechanism of beta decay, you need to know about weak interaction. I mean, it's an unstable system with two, and that's why it's rarely found in nature, because it's a single proton and two neutron. Now how exactly it converts itself into a helium and emits a electron and antineutrino in the process, is beta decay, you need to understand weak interaction and all that for that. So we will not go into that discussion, but we will estimate some other things which is from the sudden approximation of perturbation theory in that. And first of all, we will try to understand, is this approximation is applicable at all from the time scales of the problem. Then you'll get an idea about how to estimate time scales in this kind of problems. So the electron here are usually emitted with a fairly wide range of energies. The mean is like 5.6 kilo electron volt, and from there we can estimate the mass, we can estimate the velocity of the electron, and that is given by, since the mass of electron is of order 511 kV, the rest mass, then the electron will depart with a speed which you can estimate from the kinetic equation, and the velocity is like 15% of velocity of light, which is pretty high velocity, I would say. So now we want to understand that what is the associated time scale. So with that velocity, the associated time scale can be estimated by dividing this by the Bohr radius. Bohr radius, you can say this is roughly the radius of the atom, of this hydrogen atom. So the tau is of, if you divide A0 by V, you will get an order of 10 to the power minus 19 second. So that is basically the rate of the amount of time the electron spends in that, or the time scale at which the beta decay happens, the process happens. Now what is the internal time scale? The time scale at which the system, so this 3H, the hydrogen atom with two proton and one proton and two neutron has one electron in it, and it converts into a 3 helium plus, which is another stable isotope of helium, it has 2 proton and 1 neutron and 1 electron. So at what rate the system hydrogen to helium conversion happen, that rate is this 10 to the power minus 19 second. That time scale is 10 to the power minus 9. That is the time scale of the sudden quench. That's the speed of the quench, or how fast the quench is done. So now what is the internal time scale of the problem? To estimate that, we'll see what is the difference between the fast excited state and because we are concerned about the ground state of the problem, so we will estimate this with the fast excited state and the ground state. If we would have been interested about some other state of the problem, we would have done that. So we assume that initially the electron is in the ground state of the tritium atom. So we estimate the time scale, internal time scale of the system by h bar by delta E, and that is of the order of 10 to the power minus 17 second. So clearly the rate of change is almost 100 times faster, 100 times faster than the internal time scale of the problem. That is why you can safely apply sudden approximation. So that's the idea. So now what can we say by applying the sudden approximation in this problem? So the ground state of the tritium atom is of course same as the hydrogen, except is exactly the same as the hydrogen because it has exactly 1 proton. The 2 neutrons are charged neutral, so they will not contribute in the Coulomb interaction. So if we ignore the weak interaction and all this certain, that's also an approximation from purely Coulomb interaction Hamiltonian, the ground state of this problem will be same as the hydrogen atom problem, whose wave function is psi naught is equal to square root of z cube by pi a naught cube e to the power minus zr by a naught, where z is equal to 1. So after the beta decay, the electron, as the sudden approximation tells you, that the electron will remain in the same state as where it was, but it is no longer an energy eigenstate of the new problem, which is the helium problem. So what is the energy eigenstate of the helium problem? It is the same form except z equal to 2 because it has 2 proton. So now the question we want to ask, what is the probability that the electron can be found in the ground state of the new Hamiltonian? So that probability must be the overlap between these two, and that is like 0.7. So that means this sudden approximation tells me that the 70% probability is that to 70% of the time you can find the electron in the ground state of the new atom. So this is a powerful statement if you notice. So you change the system suddenly, and you are allowed to say that if you perform a measurement, what is the probability of finding the system in the ground state of the new Hamiltonian, and that you know without explicitly solving, just by calculating the overlap. So this example is actually a very simple example, that's why it might appear to you very trivial, but here you are basically taking two different problems, taking their ground state solution, calculating their overlap, and then you are able to predict that what is going to happen to the new problem if you have done such a quench. And the 70% of the time you can find it in the ground state, and rest of the time it will be in the excited state, and subsequently of course there will be a decay with some energy emission to the ground state. So this statement was actually verified, and the answer which you get by from this super simplistic estimation of sudden approximation was pretty close. And this experiment is called Catherine, it's in Karlsruhe in Germany. They have this tritium neutrino experiment. Okay, so now we will do another example. This example is also a very simple example, like harmonic instead of as simple as the particle in a box problem, and it's harmonic oscillator. And often these experiments are deliberately done to study the non-equilibrium property or excited state properties of some Hamiltonian. These are called quench experiment, and they are very common in this heat engine type non-equilibrium problem, because you know sometimes these heat engine problems has this kind of thing that you take a system from one state temperature to another temperature, state to another temperature, quasi-statically, adiabatically, or suddenly. All this kind of are part of a heat engine problem. But apart from that, there is a huge importance of this kind of, this is called quench spectroscopy. you can learn a lot about the excited state and ground state properties of an unknown Hamiltonian by doing this kind of thing, and these are very common type of experiments in quantum physics. So following that, so let's think of a harmonic oscillator. So let's say a particle is in a harmonic trap or harmonic oscillator potential with frequency omega naught. So the Hamiltonian is p square by 2m plus half omega naught square x square, which you know can be written as this form in the ladder operator notation, and this a naught is given by this. So the quench is, you suddenly change, and this is the time scale of this problem because it's a frequency, so there is a time scale, and at a much faster, shorter time scale than this time scale, you change the Hamiltonian by just changing the frequency of the potential or frequency of the trap. That is actually a very much doable experiment, that you quickly change the frequency of the trap. And you want to ask what is the probability that or what is the overlap of the Hamiltonian, of the new Hamiltonian with the old Hamiltonian, and also there are subsequent other interesting questions you want to ask, which you will see in a moment. So also note that these two wave functions are not that different, it's just both are harmonic oscillator. With just by a scaling you can actually transform from one wave function of one Hamiltonian into another Hamiltonian. So the first question we want to ask, if we are in the ground state of H naught, after we quench, which state of H we will find it, which state of H we will find the system. So in order to do that, we want to express the creation operator and annihilation operator of the new Hamiltonian in terms of that of the old Hamiltonian. So when you do that with a little bit of algebra, we can show this. A 1 by root 2 m omega x plus ip can be expressed in this form of the old Hamiltonian a naught and a naught dagger. Now let's denote the ground state of this old problem, which means the h omega naught problem, by this 0 with a cut line at the middle. So it will obey this identity of, because the annihilation operator of the old problem or the hi will act on this old ground state and give me this 0, or initial ground state give me 0. And also note that this state satisfy this property, this state of the initial Hamiltonian, this ground state initial Hamiltonian satisfy this property, which is omega plus omega naught, omega minus omega naught dagger, omega plus omega naught a is equal to omega minus omega naught dagger a. That can be worked out very simply from this kind of a relation. And now we want to answer the question that what is the probability of finding finding the particle in the various eigenstates of the new Hamiltonian, given that we knew that the system started off as a eigenstate of the old Hamiltonian or the hi. So in order to do that, we write down, express the ground state of the old Hamiltonian in terms of the ground state of the even Hamiltonian, and to notice that it must be a sum of the even parity states, and that is because of the that you can think about this, why it should be so from the Nord theorem. So based on that we can so now we can express the ground state of the old Hamiltonian in terms of the eigenstates of the new Hamiltonian. So if the quench takes, using that idea, we can show that if the quench takes place at the time t equal to 0, sudden quench, we can work out the operator expectation values. So for example, we can work out the x squared 0 and p squared 0, which is obviously it will be h cut by 2 omega naught and h cut omega by 2, and that can be seen very easily from here. And now we want to ask how the position operator will evolve under this new Hamiltonian h, and that will be given by xt is equal to x naught cos omega t plus p naught by m omega sin omega t. So from there, with some algebra, we can find that the correlation between these two, between the position operator at time t1 and t2 because note that the Hamiltonian, this x, t1, t2, everything, all these things, we want to calculate this in terms of all these quantities. We want to calculate this in terms of the new Hamiltonian. Okay, this is x squared 0 or p squared 0, and x there it doesn't matter that much, because that is just 0 time at time t equal to 0. But when I want to calculate this xt expectation value, or xt2, xt1, this type of expectation value, I want to calculate it in terms of the in the old ground state. Why? Because since I did the quench suddenly, the system is still in the old ground state. That's a sudden approximation. But xt2, xt1, that dynamical, that evolution happened in terms of the new Hamiltonian. So in order to do that, we have to do this calculation. This any time dependence have to come in terms of the new Hamiltonian, which is e to the power iht. So if I plug in that with some algebra, the algebra is a little long, we will find that this 2-point correlation function will be in this old eigenstate will be h cut by 2m omega e to the power I omega t2 minus t1. It is just the evaluation of the energy eigenstate, and even if there is no quench, we will get that anyway, because even if I use this old Hamiltonian type terms, well, you will get a similar term, but it will be with omega naught if there is no quench, and the other terms are because of quench. And this is after doing the algebra, there is some surprises you can see if you try to think about it physically, and that surprise is that this expression has a weird term, which is, it's expected that the thing will depend on this correlation function will depend on the time difference between these two, the time gap, but it is also dependent on the t1 plus t2. So that makes it not a time translationally invariant system. It depends on what is t1 and what is t2, and precisely. So it is not just the interval between them, and it is depends on the when you did that particularly. It is a very peculiar, and that means the state carries this quench state carries a memory of what happened in the past, or the memory of the quench at all the time. It carries those information, and that is only because of this quench. This term will not be there if there is no quench. So this is like a memory effect, and that's very interesting. So that is basically all about the quench. This is basically the same points which I already mentioned. The first term is just the regular time evolution. The second term came because of the quench, and the special in importance is this t1 plus t2 term, which is making the time translation invariant. Okay, now there is another problem I thought I will discuss. So I will suggest you to solve this problem 10.1, but then I wanted to discuss a research problem which I will postpone for the live lecture, or near the end of the lecture, because of the time constraint of finishing the syllabus. Okay, so that is all about from this part. Next we will move on to the adiabatic approximation.